Inside of the concentration and extermination camps of the Second World War, there were many prisoners whose stories have been lost to time. Many people were executed and killed inside of the camps, and the Nazis sought to exterminate specific groups of people. When Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany, very few predicted how destructive and damaging his time as Führer of Germany would be, not to just Germany, but to the whole of Europe and the world. The Second World War resulted in the deaths of millions of civilians, military personnel and soldiers, but there was one member of Hitler's own family which was killed by his own horrific Nazi policies. The story of Hitler's cousin, Aloisia Viet, is one which is not told, but she was a victim of her own cousin's brutality and extermination policies. Join us today as we look at the horrific execution of Hitler's cousin, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Of Adolf Hitler's family, there were a number of his relatives who were impacted greatly by the Second World War. One of his nephews was killed in brutal fashion during the conflict. Heinz Hitler was Hitler's favourite nephew, and he was a strong supporter of the Nazis. It was believed he was being groomed to be a future leading Nazi figure, however he aspired to be an officer in the Wehrmacht. During Operation Barbarossa on the Eastern Front, he saw service, but was then captured by the Soviet Red Army, and was then tortured to death inside of a military prison in Moscow. Hitler offered to swap his nephew for Stalin's son, Yakov Djugashvili. However, this was rejected, and Heinz Hitler was then killed. Another nephew, Leo Rudolf Raubal Jr., was drafted into the Luftwaffe, and he was injured during the Battle of Stalingrad. Plans were drafted to evacuate Raubal to Germany, but this was refused, and he was then captured by the Soviets on the 31st of January 1943. Hitler then gave the orders for a prisoner exchange, again for Stalin's son, but this again was denied and refused, and Raubal spent the rest of the war, and 10 years, inside different prisons in Moscow. But there was a much darker story within Hitler's family of one of his cousins who was brutally executed and killed by the Nazi Party's policies. With this, it can be viewed that Hitler, in his ideas, killed his own cousin. Aloisia Viet was a member of Hitler's own family that was killed by the Nazi campaign to wipe out those within Germany who were deemed mentally ill. She was a great-grandchild of Hitler's great-aunt, meaning that she was Hitler's second cousin once removed, and she was related to him through his father's family, the Schicklgrubers. Her paternal great-grandmother, Josepha, and Hitler's paternal grandmother, Maria Anna Schicklgruber, were both sisters. Aloisia was born on the 18th of July 1891 inside of Austria-Hungary. She worked in her early life as a chambermaid inside of a large house. However, throughout her life she suffered greatly with mental illness, and she had a number of other struggles. On the 26th of January 1932, she was admitted to the Am-Steinhof Asylum inside of Vienna for what was described as conspicuous behaviour, and inside of this institution she spent a total of 9 years in closed wards for her care. She was not allowed to have many visitors, and she and her patient file were said to have suffered from schizophrenic mental disorder with helplessness and depression, distractedness, hallucinations and delusions. With this, she was clearly a very poorly woman who was suffering, and Aloisia was then transported to the Viennese Municipal Sanatorium and Nursing Home. It's not known whether Adolf Hitler knew about his cousin's condition, but there were a number of people inside of Hitler's family who suffered from physical and mental infirmities. But in a Gestapo secret report from 1944, he labelled Aloisia's line of the family as idiotic progency, almost stating that he was regretful that he was related to her side of the family. Many of the Schicklgruber family suffered from mental illness, and it was said the entire line died out, with some even taking their own lives. Hitler declared he was proud of his own family history and heritage, and claimed he was descended from a long line of Aryans. However, he would have been very ashamed to his links to Aloisia's family, especially with their history of mental illness. Aloisia told the doctors that she was haunted by many ghosts, and also that the presence of a skull tormented her, and inside of her treatment she spent most of her time chained to her bed. She claimed at one point in a letter that she wished to be given poison, as she wanted to take her own life, and she said, "I'm sure it would only require a small amount to free me from my appalling torture." However, it would be her cousin's policies which would result in her execution. The Aktion T4 program was a campaign of mass murder and forced euthanasia inside of Nazi Germany and the occupied lands. German doctors and physicians selected patients who were deemed incurably sick after most critical medical examinations. They were then killed by the Nazis. The killings began from September 1939 and lasted until the end of the Second World War. It's believed that up to 300,000 patients inside of psychiatric hospitals were killed in Germany, Austria, occupied Poland and the Czech Republic. There was much opposition to this policy, including from the Vatican, who said it was against divine law that the direct killing of an innocent person because of mental or physical defect is not allowed, but inside of Germany, many physicians continued the programme. Hitler deemed these people to be a defect on society, and he wanted them getting rid of. The programme was authorised by Hitler himself, and doctors such as Karl Brandt, Himmler's doctor, oversaw the large-scale genocide and killing. Many hospitals and mental asylums inside of specific parts of Germany and occupied lands were completely emptied, with the patients being killed. Hitler stated on the 1st of September 1939, with regards to the policy, that Reich leader Bühler and Dr. Brandt are entrusted with the responsibility of extending the authority of physicians to be designated by name, so that the patients who, after a most critical diagnosis, on the basis of human judgment, are considered incurable, can be granted mercy death. With this, he allowed more doctors to select the people to be victims. All hospitals, nursing homes, old age homes and sanatoriums were forced to report all patients who had been held for 5 years or more, and patients declared criminally insane. Those who had other conditions such as schizophrenia, dementia, paralysis and epilepsy were also selected to die. The method of killing at times was either through lethal injection or through gassings at a number of specially designed sites across the country. Aloisia Viet, the second cousin of Adolf Hitler, was one of those women who had been selected to die through the Aktion T4 programme, and she was deported from her nursing home and sanatorium to Hartheim Castle. Hartheim Castle was a killing facility where the Aktion T4 programme was administered, and here it's believed that around 30,000 people were exterminated inside the gas chambers. Many people from concentration camps were also killed there. People from all over Germany and the occupied lands were being transported to Hartheim Castle, and within a number of hours of arriving, they were then killed and executed. It was the doctors who worked at the death centres that operated the gas tap and administered the poison gas to the suffering inmates. Doctors, to escape punishment after the war, also tried to cover up their crimes by using false names in documents. They were carrying out murder on a large scale, and buses full of patients were being taken there. When Aloisia Viet, Hitler's cousin, was transported there, she was not at Hartheim Castle long before she was killed inside of the gas chamber. On the 6th of December 1940, she was taken to the castle, where she was then sent to the gas chamber quickly, with the horrific SS doctors turning the gas on. As mentioned, she suffered greatly with schizophrenic mental instability, helplessness and depression, distraction, hallucinations and delusions throughout her life, and she was a prisoner for years inside various different institutions. She was a member of Hitler's family who was killed by the policies of the Nazi party that he led, and it's believed that Hitler probably didn't think twice about the death of his cousin, as he regarded her mental health as something that could have been damaging to his reputation. Many in Germany may have seen his links to Aloisia as a negative thing, and may have looked down at him because of this. But Aloisia Viet was a cousin of Adolf Hitler, murdered and executed by the Aktion T4 programme, which was signed off and supported by the Führer of Germany. She was one of around 300,000 people killed under the programme by doctors, who sought to wipe those who were mentally ill out of Germany, and the policy was very controversial and caused a lot of criticism. It was state-organised mass murder of those in society that needed help. Hitler showed his ruthless side and how he would stop at nothing to impose what he believed onto Germany and the occupied lands. He would even impose execution and death upon his own family members, and Aloisia Viet is remembered as Hitler's cousin who incurred his brutal wrath. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.